I am glad we could all get together to discuss implementing the Bloom's taxonomy in our classes. Today we will discuss the first stage, which is remembering.
Remembering is the lowest level. Since we all know what that is, shouldn't we jump in on the higher level?
I agree. Remembering is just thinking about knowledge, and this is the type of questions we already use in our classes. I would like to see more critical thinking.
With all the technology, students can just look up information on the internet. Is remembering really important anymore?
I understand your concerns, but I think the problem is not understanding that all levels of Bloom's taxonomy is important. All the levels build upon the others, and all the levels use some form of remembering. Let's take a few minutes and discuss the remembering stages.
That sounds like a good idea. I would be interested in what you have to say.
Remembering involves retrieving, recalling, and recognizing knowledge. Remembering is used to produce definitions, facts or lists, or recite to retrieve information. Since we do live in a digital age, it is not important to be able to retrieve every fact, nor is it realistic. Bloom's actually has some digital additions to the remembering stage. These include bullet pointing, highlighting, bookmarking or favoriting, social networking, social bookmarking, and searching or Googling. I will provide a handout that shows the rationale of each one. The remembering can be from the general to the abstract, and I gave each of you some information to do a quick study on different aspects of remembering. We will meet back after lunch to discuss our findings. Is everyone ready to go back to the meeting?
Yes, I have all my copies, and I am excited to see what everyone else found.
I have my information too.
I already have my things in the conference room. Let's get going.
Paul, you and Kendra work together. Why don't you share your findings with us?
Anderson and Krathwohl studies showed the knowledge dimension ranged from the concrete to the abstract. The first of this dimension is the factual. The factual involves the knowledge of terminology and the knowledge of specific details and elements. For example, a science instructor might ask students to list the steps of the scientific method. The second aspect of the dimension is conceptual. This involves knowledge of classification and categories. In addition, this includes knowledge of principles and generalizations, along with knowledge of theories, models, and structures. An example of the conceptual would be to recognize the symptoms of exhaustion. Now, Kendra is going to explain the last two types of remembering.
One of the aspects I am presenting is procedural. This is the knowledge of subject-specific skills and algorithms. This includes the knowledge of the techniques and methods. Finally, the procedural includes the knowledge of criteria for determining when to use appropriate procedures. A good type of assessment for this is asking how to perform CPR. The final type of remembering is the metacognitive. This is the strategic knowledge. This type of knowledge includes knowledge about cognitive tasks. This includes appropriate contextual and conditional knowledge, and finally self-knowledge. The metacognitive is the abstract remembering. One of the activities that would meet this criteria is identifying strategies for retaining information.
Paul and Kendra, you did a great job. Before we go on, let's regroup and share some thoughts.
I learned a lot from your presentation. I never knew so much was involved in remembering.
After looking at some of the information, I now know a lot more is involved in remembering than I thought, and I had thought some of the aspects would have been the higher level.
Me too. I use all of those, and I realized that I am not really asking many higher level questions. I thought I was, but a lot was still remembering.
This does show us how much we have to learn. Now, Susan is going to bring some final thoughts to show how the levels work together.
When we first started, many of us mentioned skipping the section on the remembering because it was the lowest level. When we had the break, my part of the research was to show how the different levels relate to one another. While it is okay to skip around, the levels do relate. I thought the information from The Three-Story Intellect by Oliver Wendell Holmes and Art Kestel summed up the relation. Before we can understand a concept, we have to remember it. Before we can apply that concept, we must understand it. Before we analyze it, we must be able to apply it. Before we can evaluate its impact, we must have analyzed it. Before we can create, we must have remembered, understood, applied, analyzed, and evaluated. What I just mentioned showed how each step of Bloom's taxonomy is vital to the next step. This is why we must teach and assess all levels.
Susan, that was a great ending for the discussion. We will have some closing comments, and we can all go home. This was a productive TLC team meeting. We are now ready to present the information to the faculty.
We all need to try some of the ideas in our classes, so we can show the faculty some real experiences.
We also need to have some handouts to give to the faculty. I will provide those.
We sound ready to present. This will be presented at the next faculty forum. I want all of you to present what we had today. Paul, you will get the handouts together. Susan, you will be in charge of getting some feedback from the TLC teaching experience. And Kendra, you will be in charge of answering any questions from the faculty. If there are no questions or comments, we can all go home.